never too late to learn in life, and I learned that and that's why I'm still working, I guess, because I learn something new all the time.
Clint Eastwood, the immortal icon of American cinema, the man who turned silence into power and transformed the Western genre forever. From a working-class childhood in Depression-era California, he rose to become the most enduring symbol of masculinity and grit that Hollywood has ever known. With his squinting gaze and measured words, he built an empire not from privilege, but from discipline, persistence, and an almost ruthless refusal to quit. From the man with no name who made audiences hold their breath, to Dirty Harry who redefined the anti-hero, to the Oscar-winning director who gave us Unforgiven and Million Dollar Baby, Clint Eastwood has defined what true Hollywood power means for 7 decades. At 95, he stands as the oldest working filmmaker in history, a man who has outlived most of his contemporaries and conquered every mountain the industry could throw at him. But behind that legendary stoicism lies a story not glamorous, but devastating. A battlefield of broken marriages, secret children, loves lost to betrayal and death, and tragedies that even the brightest fame could never protect him from. The world has celebrated his strength for decades, but few are prepared to face the haunting truth he now carries, wrestling with shadows so heavy that even his vast fortune cannot erase them. Before we begin, if Clint Eastwood's films ever moved you, inspired you, or shaped how you see the world, leave a like as a tribute to a man who gave everything to his craft while carrying unimaginable pain alone. Behind the granite facade of global fame lies a cruel truth. Clint Eastwood's first stage was not lit with spotlights, but with the cold, merciless uncertainty of a childhood starved not of food, but of permanence. Born on May 31st, 1930, at St. Francis Memorial Hospital in San Francisco, California, he entered a world already gripped by the Great Depression, where hope was rationed like bread and tomorrow was never promised. His mother, Ruth, was known by the surname of her second husband after Clint's father died, a detail that speaks to the impermanence that would shadow his early years. His father, Clinton Eastwood Sr., worked as a bond salesman, then a manufacturing executive, constantly chasing the next paycheck, the next opportunity, the next city that might offer stability. By the time Clint was 6, the family had moved 3 times, each relocation tearing him away from whatever fragile friendships he had managed to build. Contrary to what the press often reported, the Eastwoods were not poor. They settled in Piedmont, California, an affluent area with a swimming pool and country club memberships. Each parent drove their own car, but wealth cannot buy what young Clint needed most, a sense of belonging, of being rooted somewhere long enough to matter. His father was stern, distant, focused on providing but never on presence. Years later, Clint would admit with painful simplicity that his father never told him he was proud of him, even when he needed it most. That absence of praise, small as it might sound to others, became a lifelong scar, a shadow that followed him into every room, every stage, every silent night. School offered no escape. At Piedmont Middle School, Clint was held back a grade due to poor academic scores, a humiliation that branded him as the boy who couldn't keep up. At Piedmont High School, he was asked to leave after writing an obscene suggestion on the athletic scoreboard and burning an effigy on the school lawn. Rebellion was his only language when words failed him. He transferred to Oakland Technical High School, scraping through with barely a passing grade. Teachers looked past him. Classmates forgot his name. He was present but unseen, restless but unheard. That invisibility carved something deep into him, a hunger to be remembered, to matter, to force the world to look at him, even if it meant becoming something larger than life itself. After graduating in February 1949, Clint drifted through a series of odd jobs, each one a reminder that survival, not dreams, was the priority. He worked as a lifeguard, paper carrier, grocery clerk, forest firefighter, and golf caddy. His hands were always dirty, his pockets always light. In 1951, he was drafted into the United States Army during the Korean War and stationed at Fort Ord on the Monterey Peninsula. It was there, in the regimented rhythm of military life, that discipline became his armor. The same discipline that would one day define his directorial style, his work ethic, his refusal to do more than 1 or 2 takes because he trusted preparation over perfection. But even in the Army, tragedy nearly claimed him. On a routine flight from Seattle to San Francisco, the bomber he was aboard developed mechanical trouble and crashed into the Pacific Ocean. Clint swam through freezing water for miles, fighting hypothermia and exhaustion, clinging to life with nothing but stubborn will. He made it to shore. Barely. That day, death whispered in his ear, and he whispered back, "Not yet." It was a preview of the resilience that would carry him through 7 decades of heartbreak. After his discharge in 1953, Clint moved to Los Angeles with no connections, no safety net, and no plan beyond a desperate hunger to act. He enrolled at Los Angeles City College but dropped out to chase auditions that led nowhere. He dug swimming pools to pay rent, the same pools where wealthy families lounged while he ached in the California sun. He worked at a gas station, pumping gas for strangers who never looked him in the eye. Tall and handsome, he landed a screen test with Universal Studios in 1954 and signed a contract for $75 a week. It felt like salvation until they dropped him in 1956 after a series of bit parts in Z-grade monster movies like Tarantula and Revenge of the Creature. By 1958, Clint Eastwood was back to digging swimming pools, invisible once again. Then came the break he had bled for. In 1959, CBS cast him as Rowdy Yates in the Western television series Rawhide. For 7 years, he played second fiddle to Eric Fleming, a man Clint later described as difficult and egotistical. Clint hated the role, calling Rowdy the idiot of the plains in private. He was 30 years old playing a boyish sidekick, and the frustration gnawed at him. But he showed up every day, learned his lines, hit his marks, and waited. Discipline over desperation, patience over pride. In 1964, during a hiatus from Rawhide, Clint flew to Spain to film A Fistful of Dollars with Italian director Sergio Leone. The film paid him $15,000, a fraction of what American studios offered. But Leone saw what Hollywood missed: the quiet menace in Clint's squint, the coiled violence in his stillness. The Man with No Name was born, and when the film exploded across Europe and eventually America, Clint Eastwood was no longer invisible. He returned to Europe for 2 more Leone films, For a Few Dollars More and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, cementing his place as an international star. But fame, as Clint discovered, carries a heartbreaking price. The same intensity that made him a star also made him impossible to love. His first marriage to Maggie Johnson began in December 1953 on a blind date. They married 6 months later, young and hopeful. But even during their courtship, Clint had an affair that resulted in a daughter, Lori, born in 1954 and adopted by a Seattle couple. Maggie never knew. It was the first secret in a marriage that would eventually drown in them. Throughout the 1960s and 70s, Clint conducted what friends later called an open marriage. He had a 14-year affair with stuntwoman Roxanne Tunis, fathering a daughter, Kimber, in 1964. Maggie tolerated the betrayals, holding the marriage together even as it splintered beneath her hands. In 1968, she gave birth to their son Kyle, and in 1972, their daughter Allison. But by then, the damage was irreversible. In 1975, Clint met actress Sondra Locke on the set of The Outlawed Josie Wales, and what began as professional respect ignited into something far more consuming. Sondra Locke was married to sculptor Gordon Anderson, but the marriage was one of convenience. Anderson was homosexual, and Sondra needed the security of a legal union. When she and Clint began living together in October 1975, he told her there was no real relationship left between him and Maggie. Sondra believed him. She moved into his world completely, starring in 6 of his films, becoming his muse, his partner, his everything. He even made up a song about it, "She Made Me Monogamous," and for a while she believed that too. But behind the golden couple image, darkness was growing. During their relationship, Sondra underwent 2 abortions at Clint's insistence. She was reluctant, especially the second time at 35, and later wrote that she couldn't help but think that the baby, with both their best qualities, would have been extraordinary. Clint also convinced her to undergo a tubal ligation, effectively ending her ability to have children. All the while, he insisted she work only with him, controlling her career, isolating her from the industry. Then, in the mid-1980s, while still living with Sondra, Clint began an affair with flight attendant Jaslyn Reeves. 2 children were born from that affair, Scott in 1986 and Catherine in 1988, both with birth certificates that read, "Father declined." Sondra had no idea. For years, Clint lived a double life, shuttling between his partner and his secret family, maintaining the fiction of monogamy while fathering children with another woman. In April 1989, while Sondra was at work directing her second film, Impulse, Clint changed the locks on their Bel Air home and moved all of her possessions into storage. It was brutal, clinical, final. Sondra came home to find herself erased. She filed a palimony lawsuit. And the bitter legal battle that followed revealed the extent of Clint's deception. In court, he downplayed their relationship, calling her a part-time roommate. Friends later said that despite the animosity, Clint admitted Sondra was the love of his life. But he could never forgive her refusal to leave her legal husband, Gordon Anderson, a man she loved platonically but refused to abandon. The settlement included a development deal at Warner Brothers, but Sondra later sued again, claiming the deal was a sham designed to keep her from working. Every project she pitched was rejected, every door closed. In 1996, after another trial, they settled again, the terms undisclosed. By then, Sondra's career was over. She directed only 2 more films before disappearing from Hollywood. On November 3, 2018, Sondra Locke died at the age of 74 from cardiac arrest related to breast and bone cancer. She had undergone a double mastectomy in 1990 and battled the disease for decades. Her death was not publicly announced. There was no funeral, no memorial service. 6 weeks passed before the Los Angeles Department of Public Health confirmed it. Clint Eastwood, the man who once sang about how she made him monogamous, said nothing. To this day, he has never publicly addressed her death. Friends say he erased her from his personal history, refusing to even mention the films they made together. But even as the Sondra chapter closed in bitterness, Clint's personal life continued its relentless cycle of love and loss. In 1993, while dating actress Frances Fisher, he fathered a daughter, Francesca. But by 1995, tabloids published photos of Clint kissing Dina Ruiz, a television news anchor 35 years his junior. Frances was blindsided. The relationship ended, and in March 1996, Clint married Dina. They had a daughter, Morgan, later that year. For a while, it seemed Clint had finally found stability. But Dinah, like Maggie before her, eventually learned that stability is not the same as fidelity. By 2013, after 17 years of marriage, Dina filed for divorce. The reasons were never fully disclosed, but insiders whispered about loneliness, about a man who gave everything to his work and had nothing left for home. The divorce was finalized in 2014. Clint was 84 years old, and for the first time in decades, he was alone. Then, quietly, love returned. Her name was Christina Sandera, a restaurant hostess at Clint's Mission Ranch Hotel in Carmel by the Sea. They met in 2014, and for the first time in his life, Clint kept a relationship truly private. No red carpets, no interviews. Just 2 people in the twilight of life finding something simple and real. Christina was 33 years younger, but age no longer mattered. She accompanied him to a few premieres, standing beside him with quiet grace at the 2015 Academy Awards, and the premieres of Sully the Mule and Richard Jewell. She was a philanthropist, serving on the board of the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, a woman who eschewed the spotlight even as she stood beside one of the most famous men in the world. For 10 years, Christina was his anchor. In a life defined by chaos and movement, she offered stillness. In a career built on masks and performances, she saw the man, not the legend. Friends say Clint was happier with her than he had been in decades. She made him laugh. She cooked for him. She reminded him that even at 90, life could still be gentle. Then, on July 18, 2024, at 1:46 in the afternoon, Christina Sandera died of cardiac arrhythmia at the age of 61. Atherosclerotic coronary artery disease, the slow buildup of plaque in the arteries, had been silently claiming her for years. When her heart stopped, Clint was 94 years old and the woman who had given him peace was gone. He released a single statement, brief and devastated. Christina was a lovely, caring woman, and I will miss her very much. No further details, no interviews, just silence. In the months that followed, those close to Clint reported a noticeable decline. He has lost weight, they said. He walks with a pronounced hunchback now, his once commanding posture bent by age and grief. Getting around comes with effort and struggle. The man who once climbed 220-meter dams for a bungee jump in Goldeneye now moves slowly through his Carmel estate. A ghost in his own life. Friends worry he is becoming more reclusive, that Christina's death has robbed him of his will to keep fighting. He's living the golden years on his own terms, one source said, but another admitted he doesn't seem like himself anymore. Even as his body weakens, Clint refuses to stop working. At 94, he directed Juror Number 2, a courtroom drama that insiders say will likely be his final film. During production, there were at least 3 days when the cast and crew arrived on set, only to be told, "We're not filming today." Clint had health issues requiring medical treatment. Phil Biedron, an actor in the film, admitted asking himself, will Clint make it to the end of this movie? But he did. Because that's what Clint Eastwood does. He endures. Today, at 95 years old, Clint Eastwood is both a titan and a tragedy. He has 8 known children from 6 different women: Lori, Kimber, Kyle, Allison, Scott, Catherine, Francesca, and Morgan. Though his biographer suggests the true number may never be known, he has 5 grandchildren. He owns real estate worth tens of millions, including properties in Bel Air, Carmel, and Hawaii. His net worth is estimated at $250 million. He has won 4 Academy Awards, 5 Golden Globes, and countless other honors. He is one of the most respected filmmakers alive. But none of that can fill the void left by Christina. None of it can undo the betrayals he inflicted on Maggie, Sondra, and Francis. None of it can bring back the 2 decades he spent with Sondra, only to watch her die alone and forgotten. None of it can rewrite the fact that he has more children than he ever publicly acknowledged, that his legacy is built on both brilliance and broken hearts. His doctor once said, "Clint has become almost superhuman. His strength is amazing, but strength is not the same as invincibility." At 95, even Clint Eastwood must reckon with mortality. His hands, the same hands that once gripped a .44 Magnum and Dirty Harry, now tremble slightly when he ties his boots. His eyes, the squint that made him a legend, are clouded now with age and exhaustion. He still trains, still eats his lean proteins and greens, still follows his antioxidant regimen. But no amount of discipline can stop time. Friends say he spends most of his days at his Mission Ranch property in Carmel, the same place where he met Christina. He walks the grounds alone, past the restaurant where she once worked, through the gardens they tended together. On quiet evenings, he sits on the porch and watches the sun set over the Pacific, the same ocean he once swam through to survive a plane crash 70 years ago. Some nights he plays the piano, his fingers tracing melodies from another lifetime. Jazz standards, old Western themes, songs that remind him of who he used to be. His children visit when they can. Kyle, a successful jazz musician, brings his bass and they play together. Allison, a director and actress, asks for his advice on projects. Scott, who followed his father into action films, stops by to check on him. Morgan, his youngest, calls every few days, but even surrounded by family, there is a loneliness that no one can fill. The loneliness of a man who has outlived most of his loves, most of his friends, most of his era. Clint Eastwood's story is not one of perfect triumph. It is a story of survival purchased at the cost of connection. He built an empire, but the foundation is littered with the hearts he broke and the loves he lost. He became a legend, but legends are not allowed to be human. They are carved in stone, frozen in time, worshipped from a distance. And somewhere inside that stone monument is still the boy from Piedmont, who just wanted his father to say, "I'm proud of you." Perhaps that is the deepest tragedy of Clint Eastwood's life. Not the failed marriages or the secret children, or even the loss of Christina. It is the realization that no amount of success can heal the wound of feeling invisible. That even at 95, even with all the Oscars and all the money and all the adoration, the boy who once dug swimming pools to survive is still there, still working, still trying to prove he is worth remembering. Now, as the sun sets on his remarkable life, Clint Eastwood faces the final frontier, not with a gun or a camera, but with the quiet acceptance of a man who has given everything and has nothing left to prove. His legacy will endure in the films he made, the boundaries he broke, the silence he turned into poetry. But the man behind the legend will fade, as all men do, into memory. And perhaps that is the ultimate lesson of Clint Eastwood's life. That greatness and tragedy are not opposites, but companions. That the price of immortality is loneliness. That even the strongest man in Hollywood cannot escape the truth that in the end, we all face the darkness alone. So as we look back on the journey of this extraordinary man, we are reminded that behind every icon is a human being. Behind every legend is a story of pain, of loss, of choices made and regretted. Clint Eastwood gave us Dirty Harry and the Man with No Name. He gave us Unforgiven and $1 Million Baby. He gave us 7 decades of unforgettable cinema. But what he could never give us was the one thing he needed most. The peace that comes from being seen, not as a legend, but as a man. A flawed, complicated, heartbroken man who loved imperfectly, lost deeply, and still kept going when the world would have forgiven him for stopping. At 95, the tragedy of Clint Eastwood is not that he is forgotten. It is that he is remembered for everything except the pain it cost him to be unforgettable. And in that final irony lies the most heartbreaking truth of all. If Clint Eastwood's life has ever moved you, taught you, or reminded you of what it means to endure, leave a like below. Share this story with someone who needs to know that even legends bleed. Because in the end, Clint Eastwood's greatest film is not the ones he made, but the life he lived. And that story, tragic and triumphant, will echo long after the last frame fades to black.